Heartbroken girl marries a stranger in a rush, only to discover he's a billionaire CEO who loves her. Were you ever going to tell me who you really are? Emily's voice trembled as she held up the business magazine with her husband's face on the cover. The headline, Ethan Carter, the visionary reshaping modern technology, stared back at them both. Ethan's shoulders slumped as he sat beside her on their living room sofa. I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I own, he whispered, reaching for her hand. The night we met, you looked at me like I was just a man, not a billion-dollar empire. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Emily pulled her hand away, tears welling in her eyes. So our entire relationship was built on a lie? No, Ethan said firmly, his blue-gray eyes intense with emotion. It was built on the most honest version of myself I've ever been able to share with anyone. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to fall in love with someone, only to discover they've been hiding a massive secret? To believe you know everything about your partner, then realize you've barely scratched the surface? If you've ever questioned whether true love can survive deception, even well-intentioned deception, this story will resonate deep in your soul. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable journey of Emily Foster, a woman whose heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces, only to be mended by the most unexpected person in the most unexpected way. If you believe in second chances and the healing power of authentic love, give this video a like and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales for more stories that will touch your heart and perhaps change how you see the world. The rain pounded against the windows of Rosewood Cafe like an angry percussion, matching the turbulent emotions swirling inside Emily Foster as she stared at her untouched cup of chamomile tea. 3 hours ago, she discovered her fiancé of 2 years in their apartment with another woman. 3 hours since her carefully constructed future had shattered into unrecognizable pieces. Emily's phone buzzed again, the 14th call from James in the past hour. She silenced it without looking, watching raindrops race down the window instead. Each drop felt like the tears she was too numb to shed. Is this seat taken? Emily looked up, startled by the deep voice cutting through her thoughts. A tall man stood beside her table, rainwater dripping from his dark coat. His eyes, a striking shade of blue-gray, held a gentleness that seemed at odds with his commanding presence. No, she replied automatically, though she'd specifically chosen the corner table to be alone with her misery. Thank you. He settled into the chair across from her, placing a steaming cup of coffee on the table. Terrible night to be out. Emily nodded absently, returning her gaze to her cold tea. She wasn't interested in small talk with a stranger, not when her entire life had just imploded. You look like you've had a rough day, he observed quietly. Something in his tone, concern without pity, made Emily look up again. You could say that. Before he could respond, the cafe door burst open with such force that several customers jumped. Emily's blood ran cold. James stood in the doorway, his expensive suit soaked through, his expression thunderous as he scanned the room. When his eyes locked on her, he started forward, weaving between tables with determined strides. Emily, he growled, reaching their table. You're making a scene. Come home so we can talk about this like adults. There's nothing to talk about, Emily replied, her voice trembling despite her resolve. Please leave me alone. James reached for her arm, his fingers digging into her skin. You're being ridiculous. It wasn't what you think. The lady asked you to leave her alone. The stranger across from Emily stood, suddenly seeming much taller. There was no aggression in his posture, just a quiet authority that made James hesitate. This is between me and my fiancé, James snapped, his grip tightening on Emily's arm. Ex-fiancé, Emily corrected, finding strength in the stranger's calm presence. Let go of me, James. Sir, the stranger said, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable edge. I believe the cafe is closing soon, and you're disturbing the other customers. I suggest you leave now. Something in his tone, perhaps the absolute certainty that he would be obeyed, made James step back. He glared at Emily, his handsome face twisted with anger. This isn't over. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was trusting you, Emily replied, surprised by her own steadiness. After James stormed out, Emily released a shaky breath, rubbing her arm where his fingers had left red marks. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. Ethan Carter, the stranger said, extending his hand instead of acknowledging her thanks. And I believe some situations require intervention, especially when someone's safety might be at risk. Emily Foster, she replied, accepting his handshake. His palm was warm against her cold fingers. And he wouldn't have, he's never been violent. Emotional intimidation is its own form of violence, Ethan said simply, retaking his seat. Would you like a fresh cup of tea? Yours seems to have gone cold. That small kindness, so unexpected after the day's cruelty, brought tears to Emily's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, but not before Ethan noticed. I'm sorry, he said softly. I didn't mean to upset you. You didn't, Emily assured him, managing a weak smile. It's just been a spectacularly awful day. Then perhaps what you need is a spectacularly good evening to balance things out. Ethan suggested, a gentle warmth entering his eyes. There's a small art gallery opening just down the street. The artist uses light and shadow to create the most extraordinary effects. Would you like to see it? As friends, he added quickly. No pressure, just a distraction. Emily should have said no. She'd just ended a relationship hours ago. The last thing she needed was to spend time with another man, especially one whose kind eyes made her heart flutter in a way it hadn't in years. But the thought of returning to her empty apartment, with its echoes of betrayal and broken promises, was unbearable. I'd like that, she heard herself say. The gallery was a converted warehouse, its industrial bones softened by strategic lighting and the ethereal artwork that seemed to float in the space. Emily found herself drawn to a particular piece, a photograph of light streaming through storm clouds, creating an almost supernatural glow over a turbulent ocean. It's called After the Storm, Ethan said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. The artist captured it during a hurricane. She said she wanted to show that even in our darkest moments, light finds a way through. Emily accepted the champagne, studying the image more closely. It's beautiful, hopeful, despite the chaos. Like you, Ethan said simply. Emily turned to him, surprised. You don't know me. I know you've had your heart broken today, yet you're standing in an art gallery discussing the nature of hope instead of hiding away. That takes courage. Or foolishness, Emily countered, but she felt a small smile tugging at her lips. Sometimes the line between the two is remarkably thin. Ethan's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Are you hungry? There's a little Italian place around the corner that makes pasta that might actually change your life. That rainy evening marked the beginning of something neither Emily nor Ethan could have predicted. The gallery led to dinner to a walk along the river despite the drizzle, and the walk to a conversation so engaging that Emily forgot her heartbreak for hours at a time. Wait, you seriously climbed Mount Kilimanjaro on a dare? Emily laughed, sheltering under Ethan's umbrella as they strolled along the riverfront. In my defense, I was 22 and trying to impress a girl, Ethan admitted with a self-deprecating smile. She ended up dating my climbing instructor. Ouch. Best rejection of my life, actually. I discovered I love climbing, and I learned an important lesson about pursuing the wrong people for the wrong reasons. Emily's smile faded slightly. I wish I'd learned that lesson before wasting 2 years with James. Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her. Time spent learning who you are, and what you deserve is never wasted, Emily. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, and more surprisingly, she realized she wanted him to. Instead, he gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering for just a heartbeat. It's getting late, he said softly. May I walk you home? By the time they reached Emily's apartment building, the rain had stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the streetlights. They stood outside her door, neither quite ready to end the evening. Thank you for salvaging what started as the worst day of my life, she said, lingering in the hallway outside her apartment. The pleasure was entirely mine, Ethan replied, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Would it be too forward to ask if I might see you again? It was too soon. Emily knew that. She needed time to heal, to process the end of her engagement, to rebuild her life without James. The sensible answer was to take things slowly. I'd like that very much, she said instead. What followed was a whirlwind romance that defied all logic yet felt more right than anything Emily had ever experienced. Ethan was a constant, steadying presence as she navigated the aftermath of her broken engagement, helping her move to a new apartment, encouraging her to pursue the graphic design career she'd put on hold for James, making her laugh when memories threatened to pull her under. You're incredibly talented, Ethan said one evening, looking through her portfolio as they sat on the floor of her new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. Why did you stop designing? Emily hesitated, tracing the rim of her wine glass. James thought it was an unstable career choice. He wanted me to take a corporate job with regular hours and benefits. And what did you want? The question was so simple, yet no one had asked her that in years. I wanted to create, to make beautiful things that tell stories and evoke emotions. Then that's what you should do, Ethan said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's not that simple. I have rent to pay, and what if money wasn't an issue? Ethan interrupted. If you could do anything, what would you choose? Emily looked at him, really looked at him, wondering how this man who'd walked into her life by chance could see her so clearly when James never had. I'd start my own design studio, create branding for companies that are making a positive difference in the world. Ethan's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. Then that's your path, Emily. The rest is just details. If you've ever had someone believe in you when you'd stopped believing in yourself, hit that like button. And if you're wondering how Emily's story unfolds, how a chance meeting in a cafe could lead to a marriage with a man hiding an extraordinary secret, stay with me. The most unexpected twist in this love story is still to come. 2 months after that rainy night at Rosewood Cafe, Ethan took Emily to the cliffside gardens where they'd had their third date. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, casting a golden glow over the ocean below. Emily breathed in the salt air, feeling more at peace than she had in years. I've been thinking about something you said when we first met, Ethan said as they walked along the stone path lined with flowering jasmine. What's that? Emily asked, her fingers intertwined with his. You said time spent with James was wasted, but you also created something beautiful from that experience. Emily looked at him curiously. What do you mean? You found your strength. Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her. The courage to walk away from something that wasn't serving you, to rebuild your life on your own terms. That's remarkable, Emily. She smiled, touched by his perspective. I had help. You've been my rock these past 2 months. No. Ethan shook his head, his blue-gray eyes intense. I've been privileged to witness your journey, but the strength was always yours. Something in his tone made Emily's heart race. Ethan seemed different tonight. There was a nervous energy about him she'd never seen before. Emily, there's something I need to tell you. He took both her hands in his expression suddenly serious. Emily felt a flicker of fear. Was this the moment he told her it wasn't working? That they'd moved too fast? I know this is fast, he began, confirming her fears. Probably too fast by any reasonable standard. Emily braced herself for the goodbye she should have expected. Nothing this good ever lasted. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am of my feelings for you, Ethan continued, his voice growing more confident with each word. Emily's breath caught as Ethan's expression transformed from nervousness to absolute certainty. I don't want to waste another day not being your husband. I want to fall asleep beside you every night and wake up to your smile every morning. I want to build a life with you, a future filled with all the dreams you thought were lost. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Emily Foster, will you marry me? The world seemed to stop. The crashing waves below, the calling seabirds, even the gentle breeze, all faded away until there was nothing but Ethan's hopeful face and the thundering of Emily's heart. Every rational thought in Emily's mind screamed that this was madness. They'd known each other only 2 months. She was still healing from James's betrayal. There were 1,000 reasons to say no, to ask for more time. "This is crazy," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "We barely know each other. I know that you hum when you're concentrating on your designs. I know you take your coffee with 1 sugar but your tea with honey. I know you cry at commercials with dogs but can watch horror movies without flinching." Ethan's eyes never left hers. "I know you're brave and kind and more talented than you realize. And I know I want to spend the rest of my life learning everything else there is to know about you." Looking into Ethan's eyes, Emily saw something she'd never found with James despite their years together. Absolute certainty, unwavering devotion, and a love so profound it took her breath away. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, I'll marry you." Ethan's face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped a simple but elegant diamond ring onto her finger. When he stood and pulled her into his arms, Emily felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I promise to make you happy, Emily," he murmured against her hair. "Every single day." They were married 3 weeks later in the same cliffside gardens, with only a handful of guests, Emily's college roommate Olivia as her maid of honor, and a distinguished older man named Walter who Ethan introduced as his mentor. Emily wore a simple ivory dress that made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world, especially when she saw the awe in Ethan's eyes as she walked toward him. "You look breathtaking," he whispered when she reached him. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with a smile, taking in his tailored suit and the way the ocean breeze ruffled his dark hair. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Ethan kissed her with such tenderness that tears sprang to her eyes, Emily felt a sense of rightness that defied explanation. Sometimes the heart simply knows what the mind cannot comprehend. Their honeymoon was a magical week at a secluded beach house that Ethan said belonged to a friend. The property was stunning, a modern glass and wood structure perched on a private stretch of coastline, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made it feel like they were living within the ocean itself. "Your friend must be doing well for himself," Emily remarked on their first evening, watching the sunset from their infinity pool. Ethan's smile was enigmatic. "He's been fortunate in business." Emily didn't press the issue. She was too captivated by the perfection of the moment. The man she loved beside her, the spectacular view, and the promise of their future stretching before them like the endless horizon. The week passed in a blissful blur of lazy mornings in bed, walks on the private beach, candlelit dinners on their terrace, and conversations that lasted until dawn. Emily had never felt so connected to another person, so completely seen and accepted. It wasn't until they returned home, to the spacious downtown apartment Ethan had suggested they move into together after their engagement, that Emily began to notice inconsistencies in what she knew about her new husband. The first hint came when Ethan received a call during dinner one evening, excusing himself to speak in hushed tones in his home office. When he returned, his expression was troubled. "Everything okay?" Emily asked, concerned by the tension in his shoulders. "Just some consulting work," Ethan replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "A client having second thoughts about a project." "I didn't realize consulting was so stressful," Emily said lightly. "What exactly do you consult on?" "Business strategy, primarily." Ethan's answer was smooth but vague. "Helping companies streamline their operations and maximize their potential." Emily nodded, though something about his explanation felt rehearsed. She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the delicious pasta she'd prepared. The second hint came during a dinner at an exclusive restaurant Ethan had suggested for their 1-month anniversary. The maitre d' had greeted them with unusual deference, showing them to the best table despite the crowded dining room. "Mr. Carter, it's an honor to have you with us tonight," he said, pulling out Emily's chair. "The chef has prepared something special for you and Mrs. Carter." Emily raised an eyebrow at Ethan after the man left. "You must be a very generous tipper." Ethan laughed, though she noticed a flicker of something, discomfort, cross his face. "I've been coming here for years. They're just being hospitable." Similar incidents occurred with increasing frequency. The way hotel staff seemed to recognize Ethan even in places they'd never visited, the deferential treatment from strangers that went beyond normal courtesy, the mysterious calls that pulled him away at odd hours. Who was that? Emily asked one morning after Ethan had taken a call before dawn, speaking in what sounded like fluent Japanese. A colleague in Tokyo, he replied, kissing her forehead. Time zone differences. Sorry it woke you. I didn't know you spoke Japanese. Just enough to get by. Ethan changed the subject smoothly. What would you like to do today? I was thinking we could visit that new exhibit at the Modern Art Museum. Emily let it go, but the questions continued to accumulate in her mind. Who exactly was the man she had married? She knew he was kind, intelligent, and loving, but the practical details of his life remained strangely elusive. The truth emerged on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after their wedding. Emily was searching for a pen in Ethan's home office when she noticed a business magazine partially hidden beneath some papers on his desk. What caught her eye wasn't the magazine itself, but the familiar face on its cover. Her husband's face. Ethan Carter, the visionary reshaping modern technology, read the headline above a photo of Ethan in a tailored suit, looking every inch the powerful CEO he apparently was. Emily sank into his desk chair, the magazine trembling in her hands, as she read the article describing Ethan Carter as the reclusive billionaire behind Carter Innovations, whose groundbreaking work in sustainable technology has revolutionized multiple industries. The article detailed Ethan's rise from a brilliant MIT graduate to the founder of a tech empire worth over $11 billion. It mentioned his reputation for privacy, his refusal to engage in the social circuit typical of most billionaires, and his dedication to developing technologies that addressed climate change and global inequality. Emily felt as though she'd stepped into an alternate reality. The man described in these pages shared her husband's name and face, but seemed like a stranger. A billionaire? A tech visionary? The Ethan she knew was down-to-earth, unassuming, more likely to discuss art and literature than business and technology. Yet as she continued reading, certain pieces began to fall into place: his vague, consulting work, the deferential treatment they received everywhere they went, the mysterious calls at odd hours. Even their honeymoon borrowed beach house, which she now realized must be one of many properties Ethan owned. Her mind raced with questions. Why had he hidden this from her? Was anything about their relationship real, or had she been some kind of experiment for a bored billionaire? And most painfully, did he not trust her enough to share his true identity? When Ethan returned home that evening, he found Emily waiting in the living room, the magazine open on the coffee table between them. Were you ever going to tell me? She asked quietly. If you've ever discovered a life-changing secret about someone you love, hit that subscribe button. How would you react if the person you married turned out to be completely different from who you thought they were? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned to discover why Ethan kept his true identity hidden, and whether Emily and Ethan's whirlwind romance can survive this shocking revelation. Ethan froze in the doorway, his eyes moving from Emily's face to the magazine between them. For a moment, he looked like a man facing a firing squad, resigned, yet desperately hoping for reprieve. Emily, he said softly, setting down his keys with deliberate care. I can explain. Can you? Her voice remained steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. Because I'm struggling to understand how the man I married, the man I've shared everything with, could hide something this fundamental about himself. Ethan sat beside her, his expression a mixture of guilt and resignation. Yes, I was waiting for the right moment. After we were married seemed like a good time, Emily said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Why keep this from me? Did you think I was after your money? No, Ethan replied immediately, his eyes widening. Never that. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty that Emily had only seen once before, the night he proposed. The night we met, you were so raw, so vulnerable. You'd just been betrayed by someone you trusted. I needed you to know me as just Ethan, not as Ethan Carter, CEO. And later, Emily pressed, wrapping her arms around herself. After I fell in love with you? After I agreed to marry you? Later, I fell in love with the way you saw me, he admitted softly, his voice breaking slightly. Not as a business asset or a networking opportunity, but as a man. Do you know how rare that is in my world? How precious. He reached for her hand, relief visible in his eyes when she didn't pull away. I should have told you before we married. I was afraid of losing what we had, of changing how you looked at me. Emily was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. The pain of his deception warred with the understanding beginning to dawn. So our entire relationship was built on a lie? No, Ethan said firmly, his blue-gray eyes intense with emotion. It was built on the most honest version of myself I've ever been able to share with anyone. That doesn't make sense, Ethan. Doesn't it? He shifted to face her more directly. The man you met that night at Rosewood Cafe, the man who took you to the art gallery, who held you when you cried about James, who proposed at sunset, that's the real me, Emily. The part of me that matters. And this, she tapped the magazine cover. The Billionaire CEO? Is that not real too? It's what I do, not who I am. Ethan's voice grew passionate. Before you, my life was board meetings and balance sheets, innovation timelines and investor calls. I was respected, feared even, but never just seen. His eyes searched hers. Then I walked into that cafe, and there you were, this beautiful, wounded woman who looked at me like I was just another person seeking shelter from the rain. Emily remembered that night. How unremarkable it had seemed when a stranger asked to share her table. How could she have known that moment would change her life forever? You have to understand, Ethan continued. People have been using me for my money and connections since I made my first million at 23. Every relationship, every interaction colored by what I could provide. With you, for the first time in 15 years, I was just a man falling in love with an extraordinary woman. Emily felt tears welling in her eyes. But you let me believe you were someone with a normal life, normal means. You watched me worry about rent, about rebuilding my career, all while sitting on billions. I know, Ethan acknowledged, regret evident in his voice. I told myself I was helping in other ways, connecting you with design clients, encouraging your talent. I convinced myself that revealing my wealth would change everything between us, and I couldn't bear that thought. So instead you married me without telling me a fundamental truth about your life. Emily stood, needing distance to think clearly. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. Do you know what this feels like, Ethan? Like I've married a stranger. No more secrets, Ethan said, remaining seated, giving her the space she needed. I need to know I'm married to the real you, not just the parts you choose to show me. The man you married is the most real I've ever been with anyone, Ethan promised, his voice raw with emotion. The business, the money, that's just circumstance. What we have is the truth that matters. Emily turned back to him, studying the face she'd come to love so deeply. The same kind eyes that had offered comfort on that rainy night months ago now pleaded for understanding. How am I supposed to trust you now? One day at a time, Ethan said simply. I'll answer any question, show you any part of my life you want to see. I'm still the same man who fell in love with you at first sight. Emily, that hasn't changed. First sight, Emily echoed, surprised. A flush crept up Ethan's neck. Why do you think I asked to sit at your table that night? I'd noticed you the moment I walked into the cafe. You looked so beautiful, even in your sadness. I just wanted a chance to make you smile. Despite everything, Emily felt a warmth spreading through her chest at this revelation. So you planned our meeting? No, that was pure chance. But choosing your table wasn't. Ethan stood slowly, approaching her with careful steps, as if she might flee. I had no idea James would show up, or that our conversation would lead to the gallery, to dinner, to everything. I just knew I needed to know you. When he reached her, he didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could feel the familiar warmth of his presence. I've made a terrible mistake in not telling you the truth, Emily, but please believe that every moment between us, every feeling, every promise, those have been nothing but genuine. Emily searched his face, looking for any sign of the calculation or manipulation she'd experienced with James. Instead, she found only the open vulnerability that had drawn her to Ethan from the beginning. "I need time," she finally said. "This is overwhelming." "Of course." Ethan nodded, stepping back. "Whatever you need. I can stay at a hotel if you want space." "No," Emily said quickly, surprising herself. Despite her hurt and confusion, the thought of him leaving made her heart constrict painfully. "Stay. We need to figure this out together." Relief washed over Ethan's features. "Thank you," he whispered. The days that followed were a strange new phase in their relationship, a period of rediscovery and cautious rebuilding. True to his word, Ethan answered every question Emily asked, no matter how difficult or personal. She learned about his childhood as the son of a struggling single mother, his scholarship to MIT, and the revolutionary algorithm he developed at 22 that became the foundation of Carter Innovations. She heard about the loneliness of his success, the parasitic relationships that had left him wary of connection, and the philanthropic work that gave his wealth meaning. "Why sustainable technology?" Emily asked one evening as they sat on their balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. "You could have developed anything." Ethan's expression softened with memory. "My mother. She worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, but she always found time to take me hiking, to teach me about nature. The earth gives us everything, she used to say. The least we can do is protect it." He swirled the wine in his glass. "When I had the means to make a difference, I knew exactly where to focus." "I wish I could have met her," Emily said softly. "She would have loved you." Ethan's smile was tinged with sadness. "She died just before Carter Innovations took off. Cancer. The treatments were experimental, expensive. That's another reason I pushed so hard for success, too late for her. But maybe in time for someone else's mother." With each conversation, each revelation, Emily felt the distance between them narrowing. The hurt of his deception remained, but it was increasingly overshadowed by a deeper understanding of the man she'd married, not just Ethan her husband, or Ethan the billionaire, but the complete, complex person who encompassed both. One morning, about 2 weeks after her discovery, Emily woke early and slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb Ethan. She made her way to his home office and opened his laptop, something she'd never done before. She wasn't searching for more secrets or trying to catch him in another lie. Instead, she navigated to the Carter Innovations website, wanting to see this other side of her husband's life with clear eyes. What she found moved her deeply. Page after page detailed the company's commitment to developing technologies that addressed climate change, water scarcity, and renewable energy. There were photos of Ethan inaugurating solar fields in developing countries, testimonials from communities transformed by Carter Innovations' water purification systems, and academic papers on the company's open-source approach to life-saving medical technologies. "Emily?" Ethan's voice came from the doorway, uncertain. She turned to him, tears in her eyes. "You're changing the world." "Trying to," he corrected, approaching cautiously. "Why didn't you show me this? All the good you're doing." Ethan shrugged, suddenly looking boyish in his rumpled sleep clothes. "It never seemed relevant to us, to what we were building together. But it's such a huge part of who you are." Emily gestured to the screen. "This work, this mission, it's beautiful, Ethan." "You're beautiful," he said simply, kneeling beside her chair. "Everything else is just what I do with the time I'm not spending with you." Emily reached out, touching his face gently. "I think I'm ready to meet your world now. The whole thing, not just the parts you thought wouldn't scare me away." "Are you sure?" Hope flickered in Ethan's eyes. "I married you, all of you, even the parts one didn't know existed yet." Emily smiled, feeling the last of her resistance melting away. "I want to know everything about the man I love." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. "I don't deserve you," he whispered against her hair. "Probably not," Emily agreed with a soft laugh. "But you're stuck with me anyway." As Emily looked into his eyes, the same kind eyes that had offered comfort on that rainy night months ago, she knew he was right. The connection they shared transcended titles and bank accounts. It was built on something far more valuable. understanding, respect, and a love that had healed her broken heart when she least expected it. "I married a stranger," Emily said, a small smile curving her lips, "and somehow ended up with exactly the right man." Ethan pulled her close, his arms encircling her with the same gentle strength that had drawn her to him from the beginning. "Not a stranger," he whispered against her hair. "Just a man who's been waiting his whole life to love you. If you believe that true love means accepting someone completely, flaws, secrets, and all, give this video a thumbs up. And if you've ever had to decide whether to trust someone after they've hurt you, share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with forgiveness and second chances. In the weeks that followed, Emily stepped fully into Ethan's world, attending a charity gala as Mrs. Carter, visiting the Carter Innovations headquarters, and meeting the team that had helped build his vision. To her surprise, she found herself not overwhelmed but inspired by this new dimension of her husband's life. "Your employees genuinely respect you," she observed after touring the research and development department, where scientists had spoken of Ethan with unmistakable admiration. "I hope so," Ethan replied as they walked hand in hand through the sunlit atrium of the building he'd designed. "I've tried to create the kind of company I would have wanted to work for, one that values innovation and integrity equally." "They also seem shocked to see you smiling so much," Emily teased, nudging his shoulder playfully. Ethan laughed, the sound echoing in the open space. "That might be your influence. Apparently, I was quite the intimidating boss before you came along. The fearsome Mr. Carter, brought low by love," Emily said dramatically, enjoying the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "The best defeat of my life," he assured her, lifting her hand to kiss her palm. As Emily integrated this new reality into their relationship, she found herself facing unexpected challenges. At a business dinner with Ethan's investors, she overheard a conversation that stopped her cold. "Carter's certainly changed since he married that designer," a silver-haired man remarked to his companion. "Wonder how long before she realizes what she's sitting on and starts spending his fortune. Gold diggers always show their true colors eventually." The other man agreed with a knowing smirk. Emily's cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. Before she could decide how to respond, Ethan appeared at her side, his hand settling protectively at the small of her back. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying that quiet authority she'd first witnessed at Rosewood Cafe. "I see you've noticed my wife. Allow me to introduce you properly to Emily Carter, the woman whose artistic vision will be designing our new corporate identity, and whose ethical standards are the reason you'll be keeping your investments with us." The men blanched, stammering apologies that Ethan waved away with cool dismissal. Later that night, as Emily recounted the incident, tears of frustrated anger in her eyes, Ethan held her close. "This is what I was afraid of," he admitted. "Not that you would change toward me, but that the world would change toward you. People can be cruel when money is involved." "I don't care what they think," Emily said fiercely. "I know the truth about us." "And what truth is that?" Ethan asked, brushing a tear from her cheek. "That I fell in love with a kind stranger in a cafe, and he turned out to be the most extraordinary man I've ever known. Not because of his bank account, but because of his heart." Ethan's eyes shimmered with emotion. "How did I get so lucky?" "You sat at the right table on a rainy night," Emily replied with a smile. "Sometimes the universe knows what we need before we do." 6 months into their marriage, Emily launched her own design studio with Ethan's wholehearted support. She insisted on securing her own funding, accepting only his advice, not his financial backing. Her first major client was a non-profit developing sustainable housing solutions, a connection that came through her own networking, not her husband's influence. "I'm so proud of you," Ethan told her on the night of her studio's opening reception, watching as she confidently discussed her design philosophy with potential clients. "You've built something remarkable, entirely on your own terms." "Not entirely on my own," Emily corrected, leaning into his embrace. "Having someone who believes in you makes all the difference." As their first anniversary approached, Emily planned a surprise for Ethan, a return to Rosewood Cafe, where their story had begun. She arranged for the cafe to be closed to other customers, decorated with the same artwork they'd seen at the gallery on their first night together. When she led a blindfolded Ethan through the door, his expression of wonder upon seeing the transformed space was everything she'd hoped for. "You recreated our beginning," he said softly, taking in the familiar corner table set with chamomile tea and coffee, the photographs of light breaking through storm clouds, even the sound of rain playing gently through hidden speakers. "I wanted to remind us both where we started," Emily explained, leading him to the table. Two strangers seeking shelter from different kinds of storms. As they sat across from each other, echoing their positions from that fateful night, Emily reached for Ethan's hands. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I couldn't imagine surviving James's betrayal, let alone finding love again. Then you walked in and asked if the seat was taken." "Best question I ever asked," Ethan said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've been thinking about something you said during our honeymoon," Emily continued. "You said you wanted to spend your life learning everything about me. This year has been about me learning everything about you, the CEO, the visionary, the philanthropist. But do you know what I discovered?" "What's that?" Ethan asked, his voice husky with emotion. "That none of those titles matter as much as the one I learned first. The kind man who saw someone in pain and offered comfort without expectation." Emily squeezed his hands. "That's who I fell in love with, and that's who I find beside me every morning, regardless of what the business magazines say." Ethan's eyes glistened in the soft lighting. "I spent years building a fortune, an empire, a legacy. But nothing I've created has ever been as valuable as what we've built together." "And what's that?" Emily asked softly. "A love based on truth. Not the superficial truth of bank accounts or business success, but the deeper truth of who we are beneath all the labels and expectations." Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "Which is why I wanted to give you this." Inside was a simple gold band, inset with a single diamond that caught the light like a captured star. "It's beautiful," Emily breathed. "But we're already married." "This isn't an engagement ring or a wedding band," Ethan explained. "It's a promise ring, my pledge that from this day forward, there will never be another secret between us. Another part of myself I keep hidden from you. Complete honesty, complete vulnerability, for all the days we have together." As he slipped the ring onto her right hand, Emily felt tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "I never thought I'd be grateful for finding James with another woman, but if that hadn't happened, we might never have met," Ethan finished, bringing her hand to his lips. "Sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be." Emily leaned across the table, kissing him with all the love that had grown in her heart over their extraordinary year together. "To think I almost didn't come to this cafe that night. I believe we would have found each other somehow," Ethan said with quiet certainty. "Some connections are simply meant to be." As they sat together in the place where their journey began, Emily reflected on the strange and beautiful path that had led them here. From heartbreak to healing, from secrets to truth, from strangers to soulmates, their story had unfolded in ways she could never have imagined on that rainy night a year ago. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That sometimes love finds you when you least expect it," Emily replied, her heart full. "And sometimes the person you're meant to be with isn't who they first appear to be. They're infinitely more." Ethan's smile was radiant as he raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To unexpected beginnings. And to honest endings," Emily added, clinking her teacup against his. In that moment, Emily knew that sometimes the most beautiful futures grow from shattered pasts, and that love, when it's real, finds you exactly when you need it most, even if it arrives in the most unexpected package. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a relationship that began in an unexpected way? Do you believe that some connections are simply meant to be, regardless of timing or circumstance? Remember that sometimes our greatest heartbreaks lead us to our greatest blessings, and that true love sees beyond titles, wealth, and status to the person beneath it all. Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that every love story is unique, but the best ones always begin with truth, courage, and the willingness to take a chance on someone new, even when your heart is still healing.